So if you already know how to add and subtract with sign numbers, just do the homework. Don't watch me do the videos. I mean, this is just for students that need the extra help. So we're going to start working with subtracting with sign numbers. And there's a simple rule that says that any subtraction problem could be turned into an addition problem. And the rule would say this: if I had something like 2 minus 7, 2 minus 7 is equal to 2 plus the opposite of 7. So anytime I have a subtraction problem, any subtraction problem can be changed into an addition problem. So 2 minus 7 is the same as 2 plus the opposite of 7. And the opposite of positive 7 is negative 7. This is part of the reason why we did opposites. So 2 minus 7 is the same as 2 plus negative 7. I'm going to put that negative 7 in a parenthesis because I don't like double signs next to each other. And I'm going to start doing some math in my head. This is an adding problem. The numbers have opposite signs, so I'm going to subtract and take the sign of the larger. I'm going to do 7 minus 2 is 5. Bigger number is negative, so that's going to be negative. I'll do another example, like if I had negative 6 minus negative 4. This is a subtraction problem. Negative 6 minus negative 4 is the same as negative 6 plus the opposite of negative 4. Anytime I have a subtraction problem, I could change that subtraction to addition if I find the opposite of what's being subtracted. And I did it in words just because I think maybe that helps at the beginning. So this is going to be negative 6 plus the opposite of negative 4. The opposite of negative 4 is positive 4. Really here I'm just making double negatives positive. This is overkill right now, but this is kind of why the double negative made positive works. So now I have this written as negative 6 plus 4. This is an addition problem with opposite signs. I'm going to subtract the numbers 6 and 4 and get 2. The bigger number is negative, so I'm going to make this negative. Realistically, anytime I see a double negative, I'm going to make it positive and not even worry about it. And if I need to, change subtraction to adding the opposite, I'll do it. But eventually, I'll start doing some stuff in my head, but not at the beginning. So let's just jump into some applications here. And again, hopefully not many of you have to watch this. So 42, the first negative 8 doesn't really need to be in a parentheses. I took the time to type it, but it's okay to drop it. And then I have a double negative. Double negative, I'm just going to change to positive. Now this is an addition problem. When you have addition problems, if they have the same signs, you add. If they have opposite signs, you subtract. So these have opposite signs, so I'm going to subtract. 9 minus 8 is going to be 1. And the sign is going to be positive because the bigger number 9 is positive. I'll do the same for 44. I'm going to drop the parentheses on the negative 5. I could keep it, but it's not necessary. The double negative, I'm just going to make positive rather than getting overly theoretical. And now I'm just going to subtract. This is an adding problem. One of the numbers is positive, the other is negative. And you're adding with sign numbers, you subtract. And the sign you get is the sign of the larger number. Here, the larger number is positive, so my answer is positive. 46 I can do without rewriting, but this is really, if I want to think of this, this is 3 minus positive 6 is what's happening here. And if I want to rewrite this as a plus, this is going to be 3 plus the opposite of positive 6, or 3 plus just the opposite of 6. And the opposite of 6 is negative 6. So the proper way to rewrite this problem, if you can't just look at it and know 3 minus 6 is negative 3, is you could change it to an addition problem by changing this minus sign to a positive and that positive 6 to a negative 6. Now this is an adding with opposite signs, so I'm going to subtract the number. 6 minus 3 is 3, And because the bigger number here is negative, when I go to write my answer, that 3 needs to have a negative sign. So the answer to 46 is going to be negative 3. (48) has a double negative. I'm just going to make the double negative positive. If you could do the work in your head, you don't need to show this work. And my answer to 48 is just going to be 19 because I have nothing but positives left. If I need to rewrite 50, to rewrite it as a plus sign, I'm going to change that sign to plus, and then after the plus sign, put the opposite of 3, because minus a positive is the same as plus a negative, essentially. So that would be rewriting the problem with a plus sign. Now I'm adding and both the numbers are negative, so I just add the numbers 5 and 3 and keep the sign. The answer to this would be negative 8. 52 is just like 50. Negative 5 minus positive 9 is the same as negative 5 plus negative 9. So anytime I have minus, this is negative 5 minus, and then after the minus sign is a positive 9. And that's going to be the same as plus the opposite of 9. And the opposite of 9 is negative 9. So minus a positive is the same as plus a negative. And now I have adding and both the numbers are negative, so I just add and keep the sign. 5 plus 9 is 14. Since both the numbers are negative, I'll add and keep them negative. For 54, I need to work from left to right. So first I'm going to do negative 4 minus 6, minus a negative 6, and that's going to be the same as negative 4 plus 6, and those are adding with opposite signs, so I'll subtract the numbers and then I'll determine the sign. So 6 minus 4 is 2, because the bigger number is positive, that 2 stays positive. So I'm going to rewrite this problem as 2 minus 11. Technically that's 2 minus positive 11. If I can't get the answer of negative 9 from here, I could change this to 2 plus negative 11. Minusing a positive 11 is the same as adding a negative 11. And now this is a subtraction problem because it's adding and both the numbers have opposite signs. And 11 minus 2 is 9. When I go to write my answer, here I need to get the right sign, and because the bigger number 11 was negative, my sign needs to be negative. So the answer to 54 is going to be negative 9. I'll start 56 working with the 6 minus negative 4. The 6 minus negative 4, the double negative, I can make positive. So that 6 minus negative 4 is going to turn into 6 plus 4, which is going to be 10. I still have the minus negative 2 to contend with, and that minus negative 2, that's a double negative. I'm going to change it positive. And for an answer, I'll get 12. I think I wrote too many problems in this section. For 58, I'm going to work left to right. First, I'm going to work on combining the 5 and the minus 3. That double negative I'm going to turn positive. It's going to give me 5 plus 3, which is 8. So I can rewrite the problem as 8 plus 17 minus 40. And then I'll continue working left to right and do 8 plus 17 is 25. So I'm left with 25 minus 40. And if I need, that's the same as 25 plus negative 40, which means I need to do 40 minus 25. 10 minus 5 is 5. Borrowed a 1. 3 minus 2 is 1. The number part of this addition is 15. I have to worry about the sign, and because the bigger number 40 is negative, the sign's going to be negative. Ugh, too many problems. 60 starts off, I'll work with -3 minus 40, which I'll write as -3 plus -40. Those have the same signs, the 40 and the 3, so I'll add them and keep them negative. So the first step, working with the first two numbers combine to be minus 43. I'll keep the minus -2 and plus 15. I'll work on the -43 minus -2 next. Double negative, I'm going to turn to positive. And when I combine the first two numbers that I have left, they have opposite signs. So I'm going to subtract 43 minus 42 and get 41. Take the sign of the larger, the 43 is negative. It's a larger number, so this is going to be negative. And now we're getting to the point where I want to use a calculator if I was, had one handy, but I don't. So let me just do 41 minus 15. I'm going to borrow 1 from the 4 and make it a 3 and make this 1 and 11. Do 11 minus 5 is 6, and then 3 minus 1 is 2. So the number part of my answer is going to be 26. I just have to get the right sign. And here I'm adding a positive and a negative. The sign needs to be the sign of the larger number. The 41 was larger, so this should be a -26. Once we get out of this chapter, I'm going to use calculators like crazy. Probably on this first test for this basic adding and subtracting with sign numbers, I want you to do it by hand just to make sure you can, which will make it better when we start transitioning into variables, because your calculator usually can't do variables so well. A couple more problems. I'm going to start off with 62, working left to right. I'm going to do -4 minus -8. I'm going to make the double negative positive. Then I'm going to subtract the 8 and 4 and get 4. The sign's going to be positive because the bigger number 8 is positive. So the first two numbers that I have boxed are the -4 minus a -8 turns into +4. Change that to the number 4, leave the plus 12, and just add those, and that'll give me 16. We have a few word problems coming up here in a second. Let me just get done with 64. In 64, I'm adding a positive and a negative, so I really am subtracting. 16 minus 11 is 5. Bigger number is negative, so that sign is going to be -5. So I get -5 minus a -3. I make the double negative positive, so it's going to be -5 plus 3. Now I'm adding with opposite signs, so I subtract, and I take the sign of the larger. The number part of my answer should be 2. The bigger number is negative, so I'm going to get a -2. I know I went through that fast, but I'm assuming most of you didn't need to see everything that I did there. Shoot me an email if you need a slowed down version of this, and I can record a slower video if you need. So a few word problems. They're not particularly hard word problems, but they're just really grammar. In fact, let's just do 65 together, and maybe just do some of the word problems together. So 65 talks about a diver, and there's the surface of the water, and the diver is 200 feet below the surface, so that's probably way low. I don't dive. I imagine if you get down that low, you need to come up really slowly. But anyways, there's a diver that's 200 feet below the surface, and then she swims upward. So she goes up another 60 feet, still below the surface, because if you're down 200 feet and you go up 60 feet, you're not all the way up to the surface. And then it just says use a sign number to represent the diver's current depth. I tried to make the numbers so I could do them in my head, but what we're supposed to do, we're supposed to say the current diver is -200 feet further, because it's below sea level. And then the diver is going to increase or add 60 feet to her depth. guess it's technically getting lower. And now this is a subtraction problem because these have opposite signs. I'm going to do 200 minus 60, and I could do that in my head. That's just 140. And when I'm subtracting or adding with opposite signs, the sign is going to be the sign of the larger. So this is a signed number to represent the diver's current depth. It's minus because the diver is underwater. So for an answer, it just wants this. This is a signed number that represents the depth, but that's weird to me. I could just say the diver is 140 feet beneath the surface or underwater. I don't know. Grammar is not my friend. But as I read the question, I think the question really just wants that for an answer. I always like to, I wrote the question, so I should know what I wanted. I usually want words in a word problem answer. Well, I would take either one of these because it just tells me to give an answer as a number, but a sentence is always better. So 67 and 68 are real similar problems, so I'll do 68 and leave you 67. I think I did some, just Wikipedia searching here to get these numbers. So the average low nighttime temperature on the dark side of the moon is negative 300 degrees Fahrenheit. The average daily temperature on Mars is 220 degrees warmer than this average low temperature on the moon. Use a signed number to represent the average daily temperature. Again, I looked this up because I wanted accurate numbers. So it basically says the moon's temperature on the dark side at night averages minus 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And then the average daily temperature on Mars is 220 degrees warmer than the average low temperature on the dark side of the moon. So it's 220 more, and more to me is an adding word. So to get Mars's temperature, it's basically going to be the moon temperature plus the 220 degrees is going to give me the Mars daily temperature. And these are more logic questions than they are anything, or more understanding grammar. When we get a little bit deeper into the course, I like the word problems better because they have much more structure and they're actually easier to explain. But this is just understanding that the Mars temperature is 220 degrees warmer than that, or it's 220 degrees more than that. And I'm just going to subtract, and again, I can subtract 300 minus 220 in my head. That's just going to give me 80. And bigger number is negative, so it's going to be negative 80. So Mars, its average daily temperature is negative 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So maybe I'll even write a answer, but this just says use a signed number to represent the average daily temperature. The signed number is minus 80. I like sentences, so I'm going to say the Mars average daily temperature is negative 80, and I'm going to get lazy, degrees Fahrenheit. Two more problems. So your problem 67 should be remarkably similar, and the numbers are much easier to deal with. Let's do 69 together. Kayla camped at negative 75 feet relative to sea level, maybe like in Death Valley. She then hikes 50 feet up. What's her current altitude? So basically, this is sea level. She's not obviously in the water, but maybe she's in Death Valley, and she's currently, her altitude is minus 75 feet. So this is where she starts her hike at. So her altitude is negative 75 feet under sea level. And then she hiked up 50 feet. So not lengthwise, but altitude-wise. Might take a mile to get up this 50 feet. But then she goes up plus 50 feet. She's still going to be beneath sea level because she hasn't done 75 feet of elevation. And then what's her current altitude? Again, I could just see it, but this would be the algebraic way to do it. We take her current height at the start of the hike plus the elevation that she increased. That's going to give me her new elevation. And algebraically, this is done by subtracting 75 minus 50. And again, I could do some numbers in my head. So that's going to give me 25. And I need a sign, and she's clearly still beneath sea level because she hasn't gone up 75 feet. So I'm going to say her altitude is negative 25 feet. Technically, I guess that's all it asks for, but I like sentences, so I'm going to say her altitude, or Kayla's altitude, is 25 feet below sea level. I could say this, I could say her altitude is negative 25 feet. And if I do that, I probably don't need a sign. I do need a sign. But if I said this, her altitude is 25 feet below sea level, then I don't think I need a sign if I write it like that, because the word below implies the minus. I think both of those would be okay. But if I said her altitude is negative 25 feet below sea level, somehow that doesn't feel right to me. All right, one more problem for each of us. Maybe try to do 71 and I'll do it with you. So 71 talks about a diver free falling, and in 2 seconds the diver fell 100 feet, and then he fell 300 feet during the following 3 seconds. So basically, there's a plane, the driver in the first 2 seconds. I could actually write seconds. After 2 seconds, the diver had fallen 100 feet. And then it says, after the next 3 seconds, the diver falls another 300 feet in addition to the 100 feet that the diver already fell. So this is pictorially, no, hardly pictorially, but first 2 seconds the diver falls 100 feet. The next 3 seconds the diver falls an additional 300 feet. What's the total distance? Well, the total distance is 400. The 100 feet that the diver fell during the first 2 seconds, plus the 300 feet that the diver fell during the second 3 seconds, or the following 3 seconds. And so we'll say the diver, skydiver, has fallen or fell, and I'll just say 400 feet. All right, so that's the end of this section. Hopefully it wasn't horrible and there was just a lot of review in here. That's kind of my hopes for the beginning of our class. Next section, we multiply and divide with sign numbers. I almost think that's easier.